we all have a certain portion of our day that is obligated, time that we've committed. And so if we're going to support our families, if we're going to make a living, we have to go to work. There are things that we need just to sustain ourselves. There needs to be some time that we eat and some time that we rest. But there is a portion for all of us every day that is not committed time, that it's not time that's obligated to things that are necessary. It's the time that we can make some choices with. We can choose to rest more. We can choose to work more during that time. We can choose what relationships we're going to invest in that time that we have choices about. We can choose to read things. We can choose to watch things. We can choose to do our hobbies. And I want to talk some this morning about that element of our day, that time that we have choices about. I'm going to use the expression leisure time to talk about that time that I have a choice to do something with. Because much of what we are and much of what we become in our walk with God is directly related to what we choose to do with that time, is it not? I mean, my prayer time is going to be carved out of that time. Now, one of the blessings of prayer is that it is an activity that can be a companion activity. I can pray while I work. I can pray while I drive. And so I can talk to God at any time. But we need some time, don't we, where that's just committed to talking to God when there isn't any other distraction. When I get in the closet alone with Him and I pour out to Him my request, my praise. If I'm going to find time to get into God's Word, I'm going to do that with that leisure time, with that extra time. If there's going to be time for service, for things that I do that are the Matthew chapter 25 kinds of things, where I clothe someone that's naked, where I visit someone that's afflicted, where I share with someone that's in need. It's going to be in those opportune moments are going to come from the choices that I make with that uncommitted time. And so the things that I say today are connected to what we do with that time. What convicted me about doing this particular lesson was what we're talking about in our family class this week in terms of sowing into our children an awe for God. Because the times where we have the moments, the opportunity to do that, are going to come from what we do during that time when we are together with our kids, where we have choices to make about how that time is going to be redeemed, how that time is going to be used. As a text for the message today, I want to take us to Joshua chapter 24, where Joshua is giving his speech to Israel, really to the fathers in Israel. He's speaking in particular to the men about making a decision about what their family is going to be, about whether the Lord is going to reign in their homes or not. And so I want you to hear the closing remarks that Joshua makes in Joshua chapter 24, beginning in verse 14, where he is really giving an invitation in his sermon here, inviting the men of Israel to make a choice about what their family is going to be like. So Joshua chapter 24, verse 14. Now therefore, says Joshua, fear the Lord and serve Him in sincerity and truth. And put away the gods which your fathers served beyond the river and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. And if it is disagreeable in your sight to serve the Lord, then choose for yourselves today whom you will serve. Whether it's the gods which your fathers served, which were beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and for my house, we will serve the Lord. Joshua delivers a speech in a city called Shechem. That doesn't mean anything to us, but it meant something to Israel. Shechem was a historic place for the nation. Shechem is the place that Abraham first came to when he arrived. when Abraham made the choice that he was no longer going to serve the gods of his father, Terah, but where he was going to serve the Lord. Jacob came to Shechem after he had left Laban's house and he had all his 12 sons and his daughter in tow. And it was at the city of Shechem that Jacob said for his whole house to bring all of their idols. They were worshiping idols in Jacob's house. They learned to do that in Laban's house. And so he had all the family gather their idols and they buried them in the ground. And Jacob taught his family that as for them, they were going to serve the Lord. He made a decision there. Shechem is a place in between two mountains that is a watershed. The rivers on the east side all flow into the Jordan River, and the waters that are on the west side of the range there flow into the Mediterranean. And so it's a fitting place to have a watershed moment, to make a decision. It's a name that means shoulder. And what Joshua is doing is placing squarely on the shoulders of the fathers of the men of Israel to make a decision about what their family is going to be with respect to the Lord. And so he's calling on them here to make a decision. They had been wandering in the wilderness in Moses' time. They had been fighting against the occupants of the land and taking over the cities in Joshua's day. But now the time for wandering and the time of conquest had come to an end, and they were fixing to go into the land and to occupy it. They were going to live in this land that God had been telling them about ever since Abraham's time, that was a land flowing with milk and honey. But I want to say to you, like Joshua is saying to them, that there is some risk living in a milk and honey world. When you have cities that you didn't build, and when you have gardens that you didn't plant, and when you have trees that you didn't prune, and when you have flocks that you didn't raise, I mean, when you live in a land of abundance, when you live in a land of milk and honey, it is easy, it is mighty easy to think about, to look about, to wonder about, to be in awe of all the things that your hand has provided for you. And to forget that all this comes from God. And to not live with a heart of gratitude, to not live with a heart of awe, to not live with a heart of fear and service to God and sincerity and truth as He invites them to have. There's a lot of risk at living in such a world. And I want to say to you that if Joshua's generation was at risk of forgetting God because they were going into a land of milk and honey, then what kind of risk does our generation have? If they lived in a land of milk and honey, do we not more so in this land of abundance? And one of the things that's a sign, one of the things that's a manifestation of the fact that we live in a land of milk and honey, unlike any land of milk and honey that the world has ever known, is the fact that we even have in our society, in our generation, something that we call leisure time. You know, most of the world, for most of time, has not had that. If you lived in the 1700s, if you lived in the 1800s, if you lived before the industrial age, because lifestyles changed in what we call the industrial age, and at the end of the 1800s coming into the 1900s. If you lived before that time, your life consisted of two things. You worked and you slept. You worked and you slept. But with mechanization, with machines, with factories, with all the things that are the result of man subduing the earth, which is what God commanded us to do. But with all the things that have come with new technology, the component of our day, the part of our day that is spent working, has become a lot smaller. In 1850, the average man worked 70 plus hours a week. In 1890, that changed to about to about 63 hours a week. In 1920, that was down to 51 hours a week, and in 1950, we started a 40-hour work week. I mean, things have changed. Now, you might work more than that, but many of us have a choice about how much we work. Some of it's connected to what kind of lifestyle we want to live. But you see, we do have a choice about that. Democracy and the Industrial Revolution has given us, in our generation and particularly in our country, unprecedented wealth, unprecedented freedom, and unprecedented time. And the technology explosion of the information age has yielded a world of fun and adventure in which you can spend all three. You can spend your wealth, you can spend your freedom, and you can spend your time. And so if leaving tents for houses, if leaving the wilderness for cities, if leaving campsites for communities, and a manna subsistence for a milk and honey life had inherent dangers for Israel, then pray tell me, what kind of risk are we living in? Because we have more time, we have more money, we have more freedom than any culture ever has. I want you to think a little bit about, and please don't just think about TV when I say this. Don't think just about internet or about games. When I say entertainment, I want you to think about all the things that we do that are our hobbies, that are the ways that we invest our free time, that are the things that we have a choice to do. I want to suggest to you, and I think that this is a fact that can be proven. Entertainment is a core value in our world. Now, do you understand what I mean by value? When I say that something is a value, I'm saying to you that it becomes the basis upon which we judge the worth of things. When I say that it's a value, I mean that it becomes something foundational in a person's life so that it's a priority. I mean, you don't do other things because this is more important. And what I want to suggest to you is that entertainment has become that in our society. It's become a core value. Here are the proofs of that. Let's just think about communication and how communication has changed as a result of entertainment. It is not content. It is entertainment value by which a public speaker in any forum or venue is judged today. Anyone who wants to be a leader, anyone that wants to be a teacher, anyone who wants to be a preacher must be to some extent a bit of a thespian. I mean, you've got to be able to hold the attention of an audience. You've got to be a bit of an entertainer in order to be heard. You've got to have some stage appeal, or what you're saying doesn't matter. The worst thing that you can be as a communicator is boring. It doesn't matter if it's true. If you can't hold people's attention, then it's dismissed as not being valuable. Think about politics. It is charisma and not character. It is image and not policy that is the measure of a political figure. Think about, in our generation, in our culture, relationships. The value of a friend or of a group of peers is not measured so much by the character of our peers, but how much fun they are to be around. What a shame to make a choice of who's going to be your friend on the basis of how much fun they are to be with. Think about education. Contemporary methods of education emphasize things like interactivity. And that was a necessary change in philosophy of education. For this reason, audiences in our time aren't expected to possess nor to acquire listening skills. And so as a result, they must be physically involved in the learning process. Learning must be made a game. If it's not fun, then it's not worthwhile. In the workplace, work is measured on the fun scale. so that the value of service, of quality, of craftsmanship, of industry, of productivity, of providing for one's own, the legitimate pursuit of subduing the earth has yielded to fun. A measure of a good job is that it's a fun place to work. Even in religion, the value of things has been impacted by entertainment. The growth of some, perhaps many churches today, is fueled by the pooling of resources to build venues and to plan events that are intended to satisfy the entertainment cravings and to fill the time of the modern family. I mean, we've got to compete, folks think, some way with what's happening in the entertainment world. We've got to get families together, and so let's make that a part of the work of a church. The mere concept of reality programming in television, which is the lowest common denominator of entertainment. The mere concept of reality TV suggests, and this is so awful, it suggests that life is entertainment and entertainment is life. That is a lie. And it is a lie that the devil has so cleverly sown so that we spend our time and we pay people and we watch people just recording people living life, and not just life, but the most surreal and awful and just guttural kind of life that you can imagine. And so, if one of the chief values of our generation is entertainment, then that means that the chief vice is its opposite. And what that means is the great sin of our age is boredom. You can't commit a worse sin as a parent, as a teacher, as a friend. You can't have something worse happen in your day than to be bored and not have something to do. And so all kinds of, the best of our resources in our country, much of our money is spent trying to keep people from suffering that kind of awful crime of being bored. So we have things to fill people's time, to fill people's life, to fill people's heads, to fill people's hearts, so that no one has to experience that. That's worse than hunger, to be bored. Because entertainment has become such a value in our age. Would I be wrong to say that entertainment has become a thief of family time? Showtime, game time, practice time, party time, playtime, tea time, news time. I mean, all these allocations of time that we have a choice about, all of those allocations means that there is no family time. In many homes, there is no supper time because entertainment has crowded it out. And it's awfully easy to take supper time and make it a companion to TV time so that we can't shut things off. We can't turn things down. We can't take it out of the room. Our family time just becomes a companion to our entertainment rather than it being something that is protected. For many families, the only family time is fun time. Entertainment has replaced heavenly investments with trivial pursuits. Entertainment has replaced heavenly investments with trivial pursuits. When Jesus is answering the one-talent man who says that his master was too hard on him, that he took the talent that had been given him and he went and hid it and buried it so that he could give back to the Lord, back to his master, the thing that was his. Jesus, in answering him, tells him that, to be productive for the Lord, to pursue heavenly things, to accomplish things that really matter to God, isn't a matter of having some great treasure. It's not a matter of having some kind of special education. There's no required training. The only thing that you need to have in order to do things that really mean something to God is a heart that cares. That's all it takes to do the things that Jesus talked about. He said, I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was in prison, and you came and you visited me. None of those actions that Jesus talks about there require much in the way of resources. They don't require anything in the way of training. They only require that we care and that we choose to use our time to show our care. Now, entertainment crowds out care time. It crowds out hospitality time. It crowds out service time. So that there isn't time for hospitality, there isn't time for meaningful conversation, there isn't time for prayer, there isn't time for Bible reading, there isn't time for meditation, there isn't time for worship. Listen, folks, listen carefully. We are a 5-talent society with more leisure time as a general rule than any society preceding us. I mean, we are 5 talents. We are not a 1-talent people. We have more leisure time available to us than any generation that has ever lived, and perhaps any nation that now exists. But there is less time in our culture for service. There is very little time carved out in people's lives to serve God. Not because it has to be that way, but it's just because of what folks have chosen. I surely don't have to persuade you that entertainment has eroded our moral sensitivity. Jeremiah, when he was talking to his generation in Jeremiah 8 and verse 12, he was mourning the moral insensitivity of Israel in his day, and he said, were they ashamed because of the abominations that they had done? He says, no, they were not ashamed. He said they forgot how to blush. We don't much blink. It's a long ways away from a blush. Proverbs 4:23 tells us to watch over your heart with all diligence, for from it flow the springs of life. Garbage in, garbage out, right? If you fill your heart with things that are all the idols of this age, then of course you're going to bow down to them in terms of what your priorities are. And technology has made vicarious and sinful indulgence a very secret affair. I mean, it is easy for you to end up in a dark place very quickly. It is very easy to go play in a world that is just putridity. I mean, that is just sin and filth. It is just a mouse click away. It is just a channel click away. It is just an app away on your phone. That's all it is. There is a whole world of forbidden fruit that is where you can have unlimited access. You can have high-speed connection on the information freeway to something that is just a big abyss of sin. And when you're all through, all you have to do is wipe away the history. All you have to do is just turn off the TV and nobody knows where you've been. That is not true. God knows where we've been. God knows what we've let into our heart. And He is hurt by that. He sent His Son to save us from all of that. Why do we want it in our heart? Much less in our living room. Why do we want it in our heads? And yet technology has made that kind of adventure something that's so accessible in our world. And the added tragedy of it all, the worst thing about a society that is gluttonous for amusement, is that the most vulnerable persons in our world are its greatest consumers. Let me say that again. The most vulnerable persons among us are its greatest consumers. They're our kids. Children in our age have more wealth than any children have ever had. Children today have a disposable income. Just think about that. Children have disposable income. They have money that is theirs, that they can spend how they want. Children have more disposable income. They have more freedom. More freedom to make their own choices. More time when they're not chaperoned. More time where there aren't boundaries. They have more freedom and more time that is theirs to make choices with. And they have in our land, in our world, a land full of fun and adventure in which to spend all three. To spend their money, to spend their freedom, and to spend their time. And we've got to see the seriousness of that. And of the important role that we have in modeling what we do with that, and in helping them set boundaries, setting for them boundaries that protect them from the gods of this world. And I want to suggest to you that entertainment has become a god in our culture. And those who entertain us are the priests and the priestesses of our society. So that entertainment gets the best of many people's sacrifices. It gets the best of their time, the best of their energy, the bulk of their attention. And here's the proof of that. Folks will drive all night. They will stand in line and they will camp out on the sidewalk in the freezing cold or in the terrible heat. They will sit in the worst kind of seats that you can ever imagine, with backs that are that straight and with seats that are like 12 inches wide, and walk along rows that are a precipice where there's the risk of falling over on the people in front of you. They will sit in the worst places, in the worst kind of weather. They'll shiver in the cold or get soaked with the rain, all because they've come to see someone that is going to make them happy, that is going to get them excited, all because of entertainment, watching their favorite team, watching their favorite entertainer, going to their favorite movie. They will go in debt doing that. They will spend money they don't have. They'll just put it on a credit card because it's that important to us. And let me ask you, when I do spend the best of my money, when I do make sacrifices for something, make sacrifices where I risk life and limb, or where I risk putting myself in debt, or when I do all the other crazy things that are part of just doing something fun, how do we measure what is a God in our life? Is not God the one who deserves my greatest sacrifices? Is He not the one that I reverence? What is worship? Is it not adoration? Is it not affection? Is it not something that I show the allegiance of my heart and the priorities of my life to? Is that not what worship is? Worship is worth-ship. We show the worth of Him, of someone, with what we do. Entertainment has become that in our day. And entertainment-saturated society becomes a poor environment for spirit and truth worship. When we are really fed a steady dose of what is the entertainment of our day, we become passive listeners. Our minds become lazy, our attention spans become short, our ears become dull of hearing. A speech has to stir our senses, we have no intellectual appetite. We become casual spectators. We don't sit up, we don't show up, we don't sit down, we can't sit still, we can't be quiet. It's just everything. Everything it becomes a spectator sport. We're not participants, we're spectators. We become begrudging participants. Worship can become a chore. It's a labor. It's a burden. It's not a privilege. We have to be pepped up. We have to be pumped up in order to give something, in order to bring anything. We become self-worshipers. Worship becomes man-centered rather than God-centered. It becomes a matter of what pleases me, what pleases my appetites, what makes me feel good, not a matter of what we give and what we bring to God. So what do we do? We have to make a choice. Joshua said, "As for me and my house, And so what I want to challenge all of our fathers to do, what I want to challenge all of our men to do, is to take ownership of the spiritual direction of our house. Would you make a "as for me and my house" commitment? I mean, one in your heart to God about what your family is going to be for Him this year. We need husbands and fathers to take responsibility for the spiritual condition of their home. That's what Joshua taught for us. We need to fear the Lord, he said. We need to cultivate a healthy dose of godly fear and righteous indignation. One of the things that the kids learned about in class today is how the Philistines came into their land and they took the Ark of the Covenant. Now, why did that happen? How could the Philistines come into their homes and take away the throne of God, the mercy seat, the thing that represented God's presence in Israel? Because they let Him, is how. They let Him. They didn't fear and reverence God, and so the other nations could come in and steal it away. That ought to make us angry. It ought to get all over us when the world ends up in our hearts and in our homes and in our children's hearts. It ought to cause us to be indignant about what the devil does to us, so that we fear God and that we detest what he does, what the devil does, so that we build a fortress around our homes and our hearts that doesn't let him in. So fearing the Lord is an important piece. We have to put away the gods which our fathers served. We might need to repent. We might need to make changes in our home and in our house with what we do with our time. Serve the Lord, he said, in sincerity and truth. We need to plan our righteousness the way that we plan our fun. Jennifer and I are going to make a trip to New York in a few weeks. See? Entertainment. We're going to go hear Harry Connick Jr. sing. He's a favorite of ours. We've already bought the tickets. We've already put the date on the calendar. We're already planning that. It's all fun. Now, we need to plan our righteousness the way we plan our fun. I mean, we need to mark off time on the calendar. We need to make appointments in our schedule. We need to say that this is something I've committed to God. This is money, this is time, this is space, this is service. These are things that I've carved out for God, and nothing is going to take its place. We sanctify that. Nothing's going to take away that weekend if we can help it. Now, why can't we do that with our God time? Well, why can't we build Him into our schedule the same way that we build our fun into our schedule? The same way that we won't miss that show. We'll make sure that we whatever you do to record now. I mean, that we'll do that. We'll make sure it's done. We need to protect our God time the same way. Serve the Lord in sincerity and in truth. He sees what our priorities are. Here's my biggest concern with a lesson like this, is that we start to regard in our culture preaching, moral persuasion, just like we do other media events. And nobody minds a good toe stomping if we can just change the channel when it's over with and think happy thoughts, right? Find something, switch to something else, because there's kind of a purging of the conscience that happens just by feeling convicted. But you see, that's the problem with entertainment, is the feeling convicted is just that, it's a feeling. Just like feeling happy or feeling sad. We cry during car commercials. I mean, we see things that make us happy and sad in a split second, and then we move on to another feeling. And my concern is that our moral teaching becomes the same kind of thing. When it's all over with, we just change the channel and we think about something else. Tune in to something else. Don't do that. I hope that thinking about this sinks into our hearts so that we really do make some decisions for our family, for our house, for our own hearts, about who we're going to be for God. Choose you this day, as together we stand and as we sing.